Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listening to replay. I definitely want to let you all know about the workshop that we have coming up. We actually have it coming up on August the 6th. We have quite a few people that are first time listeners and older listeners that have listened for years now. We just want to let them know about the event that we have coming up. It is open to people that are not in the trustee training. Look forward to seeing people there. We have quite a few VIPs, and so that's always going to be a little bit more sweeter. Got to talk about that because that's been something that we've looked forward to doing something where we kind of get back in the room with trustees on more of a loosen up your tie occasion. When it's a little bit more young people or the audience nowadays call cash. So definitely want to thank everybody that is going to be at the workshop in advance. Safe travels. We're on the countdown to the meter now for people coming to the workshop. There is no ticket sales at the door or anything of that nature. So people have asked about that through emails. It's like any traditional workshop. There is no anything at the door other than your name and getting in the room. These are private rooms. We look forward to doing them internationally again as well, and so at the same time, we definitely look forward to doing them in the States still. So, trustee responsibilities. This is episode 415, charitable investments. Definitely want to do this topic because so many people have different perspectives on charitable giving, and so we're going to come at it from the wealth management perspective. We're going to come at it from the senior trustee perspective, how it looks in the private. This is a unbeknownst thought, but we're going to talk about it. It doesn't get as much pull as it can, but it does get its pull because when you do step into the private sector, charitable investments are what's running the day, just like private investments are running the day. And the way they're able to do that is being able to diversify and not just be a traditional business, but being able to have things that are in what you would call non-taxable entities or environments. Particularly when we talk about charity, a lot of people talk about it from that perspective of it not being taxable or it not being something that is something that people should be able to see because you get benefits even when you have a charity on the public side, going in and not having to deal with certain type of sales tax and things like that. So it's not just the income tax. It's not income tax. It's many things. And so sales tax and you see these different type of taxes for these entities. So you see how that can add up. But specifically from the charitable side, we're going to talk about it from a different perspective today. That's usually not traditional, not in the public. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. This is definitely not legal advice or financial advice, but we still have to give the so-called disclaimer, because it's important for us to just have a conversation about the trustees' responsibilities of passing along wealth. See, this used to be the passing along stage, but we're going to get a little bit more nitty gritty. If you're a long time listener, you're aware where we're about to go. We're talking about it from a foundation. We're talking about any great leader, anybody that's made some money. What do they say in the public? I'm not giving money to my kids. I'm going to give it to charity. So you see what, a billionaire giving their money to charity? What about the people that are less than a billionaire? Are the millionaires giving their money to charity? Do you hear them say they're giving their money to charity? Do you hear them say that they're operating in a position of charitable investments? When you hear these things in the public thrown around, oh, I have a charity. Well, most people take that as a nonprofit entity. So let's get past the nonprofit aspect. Once again, is the entity for investments? Charitable investments? Hey, oh, Trust Christian, we weren't educated on that in the public. What does a charitable investment look like? So most colleges are started with charitable investments, private endowments. We've talked about it on this channel many times about how Morehouse and Spelman, we know our audience, and so we speak to a diverse audience. But even still, to know that this is labeled as a HBCU, Morehouse, or Spelman, these are the facts. You can go look it up. Who has the largest endowment at the school? It's the Rockefeller Foundation when it comes to these institutions. because these are the people that funded the school way back when, and still 100 years later, for sure, they're still in effect. Charitable investments. Is that wrong? So how do you pass it along? How do you do this for yourself? These are the questions that people are going to ask, because so-called Rockefellers unrelatable. Who else is unrelatable? All these rich guys, Warren Buffett, anybody that you can name that's in the public that says, I won't give my money to my children. I'm going to give it away to who? I'm going to give it away to charity. Most people take this as a colloquialism of, hey, they signed the pact and the pledge that they're going to give all their money away. Like all these tech guys are out here saying they're going to give their money away. They're going to give half their wealth away because they couldn't spend $1 billion. Well, sure, you couldn't spend $1 billion, but it does take quite a bit of capital to maintain particular lifestyles and actually build things. So when you do build businesses, they might cost quite a bit. So when you see an entrepreneur such as Elon Musk take the money from PayPal that he built and cashed out of and put it into the next company, that's how it looks. It doesn't look like, well, I'm just going to give my money arbitrarily away. How do you know what his tax liability was when he took the money from one business and put it into the next business? And you think he wasn't smart enough to know that? Definitely smart enough to know that. You built $100 million, you built $1 billion company in PayPal, you exited the company with a company with quite a bit of capital. What do? You go put it in another company. Instead, he didn't pull it out like most public people would think. Well, I'll cash out quite a few, millions of dollars and I'll cash out. Yeah. You think he couldn't get a loan against that money? Of course he got a loan against the money. So he really didn't touch the money for his public, so it went back into the business. We're going to talk about it from a charitable perspective, not from the Elon. Obviously, in the public, it's too easy to talk about him at this point. He's so in the public and has shared his life story. We're going to talk about today charitable investments. So let's go over to the shining light of the culture right now. Supposedly, we could say that anybody that's given to a college is going to look like a hero. So let's go look at one of the modern heroes of today, billionaire on paper, Robert Smith, giving away millions of dollars to Howard University for the paying off the debt of students. Now, some people might look at this and say, "Oh, Robert Smith, an ex Goldman Sachs employee, somebody that has patents to his name. He's just gonna give money away 'cause he's some poor old Negro boy from the middle of nowhere in the country. Go listen to his story. He's just gonna give the money away and not have any type of situation, a foundation in place." Well, he actually got hit with a suit not too long ago because someone he was connected with was utilizing the foundation. So what makes you think that Robert Smith would have not given an endowment to Howard University as a billionaire and put it in the form of an endowment? Oh man, he was too smart for his own good. He wouldn't have did that. You think you get to that level and you don't know that? It's rare. And he's an ex Goldman Sachs guy. He knows about M&A. He did that. He knows about these so-called private things, whether it's to he has patents to his name. So he obviously knows what we're talking about. Well, I'm just gonna if I need to give away $40 million, if I need to give away $4 million to wipe out some students' loans, hey, and this is gonna give me a tax write-off one, and guess what? It'll also put a charitable investment for future generations with this college because there's strategic ways of operating, and then there's flying by the seat of your pants ways of flying. It's pretty obvious, pretty confident. This was in the form of an endowment. Money's not just given arbitrarily away by people in this caliber and category. The reason why you're even in this category or caliber is because you have the wherewithal to understand financial information. If he's considered to be a billionaire, he understands a high level of financial information. being able to give money away through a charity is probably one of them. Why? Because he sat there and did M&A for years. So he knows that there are companies that they have a charity hooked up to the company, and that's how it works. Most Fortune 500s have charities. When you start looking at these crypto companies, they all have foundations. Most of them, if they any worth their, if they're worth any other salt, most of them have a charitable entity from the beginning. So people can say, well, okay, you're talking about this generally, which we are, but we can keep going even deeper. There's different types of charitable trust, different types of charitable entities, LLCs, trusts, they have different type of structures. So this is where we first get into what entity can even make these endowments. Well, we know it's a charity because charities make these endowments. There can be other things. Somebody say, oh, is this the matter about the structure? Well, remember, in trust, it's own nothing, control everything. In the public, who owns it? Well, the public own it. Well, who started it? You may have. And who's the manager? You are. Well, this is where we talk to our trustees in a specific manner of, does the company have a car? Does the company have a cell phone? Does the company have property? So let's jump into it. So let's talk about it from the perspective that a lot of people come at it from, this charitable investment perspective on the public side. Because we just talked about the private side, we talked about the endowments. Let's talk about it from the public side, how it looks. Oh man, Trust Christian Vault. I'm gonna get in the foundation. I'm gonna put all these properties I got. I'm gonna put them in the private family foundation, and I'm gonna just earn money tax free. Because I'm gonna just put them in. What if I put the properties that I got inside of a foundation? Can I just make the money or the money be made in the foundation? Well, are those for profit businesses? Well, yeah, I'm renting them out to people, through a lease. This is where we talk to our trustees when we're able to sit in a room and we're able to have a conversation and we're able to say asset protection comes from asset separation. So what happens when someone sues the owner of one of those properties? So this is where we were on a conversation. Actually, I heard someone the other day through the grapevine. Somehow it came across our ears that, oh, well, the charity, it has an LLC and it has these properties that it's buying and things of that nature, and or it's renting them out and things of that nature. And we remember a case while when we were younger that literally, this is a Fortune 5, it was a Fortune 500 company, it's probably a Fortune 1000 company. Literally, they they had a lot of employees. It's a small city. They had a lot of employees. They were downtown in a major city. So what the company was buying properties in the area, and in turn, they were doing it through a charity, and then the charity had an LLC. Like, this is the reality of what people are doing in the public. So yes, they were in the public. This is a Fortune 1000 company for sure. It's in a major city, and they were buying properties. Now, could you say they were buying for their employees? Whatever. They were growing. They had quite a few. Their headquarters was right there in a major city. Their warehouse was right there in the city, or one of them. And so yes, they started a charity. This Fortune 1000 company started a charity, and then they put an LLC under the charity. And you see how they were out buying properties. Well, okay. Somehow this became public, and next thing you know, the company hasn't really recovered since those days. And that's just the facts. Are they still in the top 2,000 companies in the United States? Yes, they are a major. We'll say that they're a sports brand. So we'll give up that much information. They are one of the top sports brands in the United States and almost in the world, but they're specifically in the States, and they definitely are huge, and they did that. And so, was that wise? No, they got busted. Did you hear the word? They got busted because they were operating for profit businesses under a charity. Now, we can have lawyers come on the line and type into the chat. We can have accountants come on and type into the chat. Once again, those things, the situation that we just described, that situation, they got busted. So when we have trustees come to us and they say these things like, oh, well, if I just put the properties inside of the foundation, well, let's show you what it looks like in the private sector once again when the foundation is holding family property. So, some of you all may be familiar with where it all starts almost, but it doesn't start there. But we'll give them credit for the beginning of what most people consider a modern day contract. It's an English contract. So, we're going to go to England. Most people are familiar with the castles that they have in England. And yes, some of the royal family live in these castles. So, they may have a castle of 40 rooms, and 10 to 15 rooms are being slept in and maintained by the family. And the other part of the house is used as a museum where people can walk through and see art that costs money. Maybe these people pay to get in, but remember, it's for the literally just to keep displaying the art. Now, whether people know it or not, they didn't need that money from those people, but they do it to show that it's for charity. Why? So people can come through and look. Sometimes they might offer free viewings. They might do that for children at a school. If you go to DC, the easiest example of this is on the in the Americas is the Smithsonian's in DC. Now, if you've ever been in the Smithsonian, you can type into the chat whether you paid to get into the Smithsonian. But these are charitable edifices, once again, of run by foundations in DC, Washington D.C. If you all have ever visited, have you paid? Did you not pay? Trust Christian Revolt, we went when we were young kids, so we went on field trips to there. Appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live, listen, and replay. Always appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live, listen, and replay. We got San Francisco tuning in live, listen, and replay. Always appreciate everybody tuning in live, listen, and replay. Sigma Enigma typed into the chat. Can we virtually attend the conference? We've never done that, and we don't know when it'll get there, but it'll probably never get there. Those are things that the world has been conditioned to now. It's almost like us saying, well, yeah, back in the day when our mentors were in the 80s and they had to travel over to Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, the Cayman Islands, yeah, they went in there with the big guys, the millionaires, the billionaires. Oh, they went on to these, we're not going to say private islands. We're just going to say, once again, Bermuda. We're going to say these places that are considered to be tax havens. When mentors go over there, you think these people are trying to virtually do a meet and still in 2022? No. They weren't doing them in the 80s? Maybe because they couldn't by technology, right? Right. You think these people that are in Luxembourg are trying to have meetings with virtual people? No. And it's always going to be like that. I like that comment. Somebody say, you holding us back. Yeah. If you say so, we think that the conversation that we're having about charitable investments is coming at it from multiple perspectives that we went through public school. Did they go over this? No. Did your family go over this with you? That's a question to be answered. Because we had somebody come on the line the other day and say, hey, Trust Christian, we heard that episode about your grandmother and how, she said she wasn't going to give anything. And we thought about that before we did this episode. And we thought about like how that means nothing. How it was to share with you that there are many people that have had that statement said to them, or in kind, they just haven't been passed along any assets. And not only have they not been passed along any assets, they haven't been passed along the information to even grow assets. So they had to go back out to public school and get a public school education. So we'll continue with the charitable investments. We were talking about it from the perspective of how it looks in the States with the Smithsonian's. Those are endowment run. When you look at the, what do you say? when you got the Smithsonian and the public and they're doing endowments. This is why we have not always entertained the chat. We like for you all to type into the chat. That's appreciated. Where you're from, where you're listening from. Then we get into these side conversations. This is actually supposed to be a one time go through. Never have to talk about the same subject ever again. Specifically, when we talk about charitable investments, we're not going to continue to entertain the chat or have a conversation with the chat unless you're sharing where you're from or, giving any type of praise to the situation because some of the comments that I've typed already, these are adults. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're kids. But this is an adult conversation because usually adults can pass along assets. Usually, the conversation that we're having with our audience, they're a little bit older. They're an audience that's over 18 years old. They're more focused on actually doing what we're talking about in the actual episode, which is charitable investments, making sure that they can actually pass something along from one generation to the next and do that in an unencumbered way. Because we know that most people in the public are not given specific information, specifically private information, how to make sure that their family can pass along assets in a very secure and productive way. We actually ran across what was that? A case the other day where James Brown, this is someone that most people know in the public, James Brown, it took about 15 years to administer his estate. Recently, they say that what they say that recently, this is why he actually just literally just finished his estate, which is 15, uh, what is that? 15 years later. And so when we actually see that people that are famous in the public, people think, oh, they have this much money, they should know this information. We did talk about it from multiple perspectives, multiple people, because we understand that, well, you know what happens in life, ladies and gentlemen. uh, you know in life, you just have to move on. It's cool. Alrighty. Some people think their opinion is worthwhile in the world. Maybe we could say that about ours. But, hey, we have a workshop coming up. Those people on the flyer are just as real as Trust Christian and Evolve is. So we look forward to seeing people at the workshop. And the ones that want to get it online, hey, that's never happened. And we'll continue to let you know. Look forward to seeing you in person if that's ever going to happen. You don't want to have sticky fingers behind a computer now. So, let's come around from the computer and actually meet people. Then maybe your hands won't be sticky. Come around from the computers, ladies and gentlemen. It's very important in today's day and age. It's one of those things like we could almost stop the episode and say, well, hey, do you think somebody's going to give you money for a charitable investment behind a computer screen? Not at all. You think somebody's going to, if people think that's being done, fine. Have at it. That's new. The old way that has worked for hundreds of years to get charitable investments is you meet people face to face. You go meet them. You go shake their hand for what it's worth. You look them in the eyes. You look in someone's soul. We are sorry that we're in the age of a computer screen. That's not our fault. But what we do have to do as senior trustees is hold decorum because there are senior trustees that are passing along assets right now. They're passing along money, wealth, and they're doing it through charitable investments. And they're sharing that knowledge and they're sharing those investment strategies with people that invest in themselves for their family, for others, to be a source of information for their community. Charitable investments. Hmm. Well, It looks like once again, when you're in a position of, hey, I want to invest in a charity aspect now. You told us that property is not going to be the deal. We didn't say that necessarily, but we also shared a story, and you all can Google these stories. And this is the benefit of trustee training: is when you're in the training, you can go, we go over these cases with our trustees, so you can say, oh well, this is how the victor won, and this is how the loser lost. Charitable investments. Oh man, and when I got into the business environment, they really didn't share that I could make investments from the charity. But I am aware of that now. I am aware of that. Okay. Why is that not a primary vehicle? Oh, it's for the wealthy and they just get in it and they make a ton of money. Are you serious? Let's have a candid conversation where there are endowments, which is a charitable fund that grows from scratch and grows from scratch. That is an educational institute. When you look at educational institutes, they are grown from scratch off of charitable endowments. Is that the only way trust Christian involved? Because, what if we have a charity but we don't want to start a school? What if we don't want to give to a school? Can we do a hospital? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the hospitals. These things that provide modern day care. We have no bias towards this situation. We are talking about it from a general perspective that we have to address because this is how things are done. We ask our trustees, do you think if you gave money to a local hospital in the form of an endowment, do you think you're going to have to wait in the ER? Well, if you gave $5,000, sure, you might have to wait. But if you gave $90,000, you might not have to wait. There's a difference. If you gave even maybe 25K, go into your local hospital. Ask them. We talked to someone the other day, said they had a foundation. So we asked them, you're in the foundation. What investments have you made from the foundation? Oh, we haven't gotten there yet. Well, you got a bunch of property you're looking to sell and get out of. What are you waiting for? This is where they come to the vault because now we're having that conversation of not just strategy, but management. How are you about to manage the estate now from one generation to the next? Not just the here and now, but the next generation. So when you say, oh, I'm not going to give the money to my children, are your children going to be the trustees of the charity? Are your children going to be the managers of the charity? Or are your children going to be on welfare, benefiting from the charity? See, we want to talk about it now from some real harsh realities for people. We hear the stories. We would like to say people stand a chance. How do you stand a chance when your own ignorance, which is lack of knowledge, is in the way? You stand a chance when you're investing in your family's education from one generation to the next. Charitable investments. That's what it is. You're not just passing along a house. You're not just passing along some gold, oh, we got to get the gold bucks. I'm going to give my family gold and silver. Yeah, you're going to give them gold and silver. Do they know how to manage it? Did you give them a book on that? How do they know about gold and silver? Did you learn about gold and silver in public school? Probably not. Most people didn't. Sure, we learned about it in a book, but did you get the information that says this is how you learn how to hypothecate this asset? Did you learn how to lease out the asset? Did you learn how to uh, do many different type of ways of moving? Because it is an asset and you don't have to hold it in your hands. But these are the things that we have to talk about because are these conversations being had in the public school? Clearly they're not. Well, what about the private schools? Christian, trust Christian, the vault. These people go to private school. Do they got an advantage? Some of them do. When you go to a school that specifically is talking about finances and leadership and communication, sounds like you're groomed to be a great trustee. When you go to a school that literally focuses on experimentation, this isn't a traditional educational cookie cutter, know your ABCs, one, two, threes, no world history, no poli sci, and all this other stuff. No algebra. No, we're talking about where you go to a private school and they say, yes, you do learn through leadership. Those are charitable investments. When people are paying for their children to go to high school, oh, let's talk about it, Trust Christian. Oh, because I didn't think about it that way. It didn't have to be a college, it didn't have to be a hospital, it could be a high school. Right. It could be a high school. We could talk about one, man, if y'all only knew, like, how many people are in the private sector and they're just not speaking. They don't they're private. Their charitable investments are private. They're not going to speak on the money, but they may speak about the project. They're just not going to speak about the money. It's a charitable investment. They're not going to speak about the private return that they're getting. They're going to speak about their giving. It's a show and tell game. So when we talk about Robert Smith, fine, we'll go there. There's another individual has a school. Many of these individuals have schools. LeBron James has a school. He has a contract with the county and the city that this school is in. Let's talk about Jalen Rose. There's another guy. Got to give him his flowers, because he's somebody that is successful and has a charter school. These schools are going to continue to pop up because people that acquire money, they create an education system that's more suitable to them operating in the modern day world. So them investing in their child's education and children's education is a charitable investment. It's not just them creating a school. Oh man, I gotta get my skills up. But I'm gonna go out and do this. Man, we're not even gonna talk about all that other BS that they have out in the public. All these different programs that they have for people in the public to what do a charitable return. You put money in now, tax free, and then when it comes back, it'll be less. And what are we talking about? We're talking about tax free or not. We get in these environments, you start hearing these people talk about not in the private sector, but usually in the public sector. Oh, charity, charity. You even hear people ask on the line in a conversation as of recent, well, does the charity does it have a tax liability? Okay, if we're gonna get a 501c designation, 501c3 designation, that means it's tax exempt. Y'all can look that up on the internet. And they still ask these questions because most people are not aware, and that's fair. But now we're talking about it from that perspective. Okay, now you're in this sector. The money that's made in that sector, the capital that's made in that sector, is made in a specific way. It's supposed to be tax free, right? Right. You can see how you can accumulate wealth rather quickly. How families can acquire wealth rather quickly. You can see how somebody can maintain wealth from one generation to the next. Now, if you have to have a good school because that means other people are going to want to bring their kids to your school. Wealthy families, and they put endowments at the school, and the school will never go away. Why? Because they have generations of people vested in the school. See, at the Vault, we can have this level of community planning, but it takes communities. Charitable investments doesn't need a community; it needs a family, and maybe a community of families to work together. Because that's usually what it is the sector we're in are private family foundations. Sure, private foundations, that's fine. We heard those. The ones that are families, they're started by a family. Hmm. And they actually are for investment purposes. We can name the names Rockefeller Foundation. Now, think about this. How many of you all listening have ever been given money from one of these organizations? Ford Foundation, Google Foundation. Google does have a foundation. It may not be called that, but Google, they give money away for STEMs and people going out and doing that type of education. So they have their foundation. Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, Ford Foundation, Lilly Foundation. Uh, there's so many out there. Oppenheimer Foundation, Kennedy Foundation. Kennedy, what? They got a whole space center named after him. Once again, we can go through the list in the gambit of these organizations that are charities. Now, you can go to what we see on the religious side. We can see that. Y'all think that religious organizations are not holding endowments? Let's talk about it. Oh man, Trust Christian, we hear you think you go to this perspective. So some people may be familiar with in the states there are places in the South, specifically in the South, could be in the North too as well, that there it's like an old church, and they used to have a full packed out service. But now, just generations later, people haven't stayed in that area. They've migrated away, but the church is still around. The church is still around. They may have three or four or five or seven members coming in there, 10 members coming in there, but it isn't the 50 to 60 that used to come when it was at its height and its inception. It doesn't have 100 anymore. It doesn't have the youth that renewed it, but their church still might have like 30 members from the area, old timers, maybe some young people that still want to help out. But we're saying that the numbers are low now because that is happening. It does happen where how many people want to go live in Lawrenceville, Kentucky. So these type of places, they have had religious organizations, churches, organizations there, and in turn, endowments sometimes look with them. Who would be the trustee of the endowment? Could be the bank. The bank is making sure that that property has no lease or has no mortgage, that the fees are paid for. Why? Because the church came together for all those years previously, put money in the pot, and they created what's called the building fund. You all know about that if you went to the church. You know about that. The building fund. And the building fund was the fund to make sure that the church is always going to be here. Oh man, for real? It's still around? Right, because they gave money to, well, we could call them an investment manager, an asset manager on the public side. We could call it an endowment in the county, where the county has been given money so they can make sure that that land is, just they're going to have that land. This is a charitable land, and we got to talk about taxes now because you got to talk about county taxes. Do they have to deal with that? How about you all understand what we're talking about when we talk about it from that perspective? The county knows that it's a tax exempt entity. What kind of conversations are you all having with the county now? So once again, there might be endowments, there might be contracts around with it. Once again, church is an entity. It can go out and make investments. It might go out, like we talk about, and have businesses erected, and in turn have cash flow coming to it. So that's why you have to have a good legal team around you, so you can make sure that you're doing it from the proper perspective. Whereas that looks definitely different as a building fund going out and getting, maybe the building fund goes out and gets property for people in the congregation. So if somebody ever hits hard times in the congregation, they have a property that someone in the congregation can go stay at and wash and eat at. That's how it looks on the public side. We'll repeat it. So on the public side, because you have to know you have to really just have a good legal team. You don't even need to know the laws. You can know the laws, but we'll say should know the laws, but good legal team. So we'll talk about it once again. The church, the old churches, they collected the building fund for years. They had a good legal team. Somebody, doesn't have to be a huge team, and they went out, and their church went in, created some type of entity to go out and acquire properties. So if a member hit hard times, they lost it, they got kicked out, something happened, people don't want children to be on the street, mothers and families, cool, well, we have a property, the church has a property that you can go stay in for a period of time so you're not on the street. That's what the building fund does. That's what it looks like for charitable investments. And then you see how these churches, we're not even going to go there about the ones in Chicago next to liquor stores. But we're going to talk about the fact that, yes, these churches own strip malls. How many of you all have heard churches, these religious organizations, these 501c3 tax exempt entities owning these strip malls tax free? Right. So, as you all can see, it's a system. It's a system that's put in place to develop what we see. Some of those older generation churches, they may not have a strip mall. More modern ones have something that they may be adjacent to. They may own land. Think about it. How does a church own land? Because they have the building fund. They went out and they acquired land. So if they developed it, they had it for their members. They had it for their pastor. So they could put the pastor in the property. Now, we could talk about it from the private foundation perspective, or the foundation perspective, or a trust perspective, or a charity perspective. But let's talk about it from the church perspective, where on the public side, how it looks, the pastor gets a free house. Oh, I'm sorry, Dizzy. We're not going to say in all cases, but hey, if you're running a church, don't you get a free house? Free. Why? Because he's a steward of the flock. He's a steward of the assets. He's not an owner of the assets. He's a manager of the assets. We're not doing gender specific he or she. We're just utilizing a pronoun to keep the point moving. So once again, he, she, they literally are just stewards of the assets, but they get to enjoy the church house. Huh. The charitable investment property house. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Did they get something in their name? Did they get something in their name? No, he's not going to go out and buy that Benzo, that Beamer. He's not going to go out and, go buy a private jet with his funds because he doesn't have any. But guess what? Joel Osteen, he doesn't own the jet. The church does. Somehow, the congregation just can't fit on it. Right. That's how it looks in the public. But we're not going to stop there today. We're going to go with one of the biggest charities of all, the government. So, you got these government guys, these politicians in place, which are stewards. They don't own the money. They don't own it. They control it, right? Right. So, they're the stewards. They're the asset managers, writing contracts for the time being. Do you think they're driving around in their own vehicles? Oh man, I heard Bernie Sanders drives an old beat up car. Yeah, so go look up his net worth. What he wants to show you on the public side. It's like when Donald Trump says he doesn't have a tax return. That's a Bernie Sanders move. Bernie's only showing you what he wants to show you. But we got to set the record straight because both sides are playing the game. Oh man, the blue or the red or the green or the yellow, we're all playing different games. How are they playing different games? First of all, they're stewards. They're stewards. They're servants. They don't get a lifetime position. When you get voted in, you don't get a lifetime position as a politician. Somehow they might think this, but you don't get that. You got to get reelected. Right. Because there's a system in place. Checks and balances. Somehow some people are just good enough to keep doing it. That's their career. A career politician. If you knew what that used to be back in the day before the 80s and before the 19th century, it was actually truly considered charity. You were volunteering your time, not going in to get $100,000 plus and then get a private vehicle with a private security and ride around privately and never have to pay for anything. Why? Because you have a contract. You see, you got the original contract, which was the 100K plus for these positions. Oh man, not every politician does that. It's not supposed to be that. It's charity. It's not supposed to be that. So why did they need to get a check? Well, they convinced the public, hey, can we get a salary? Sure. Now we need a salary. Politicians get a salary. How do they need a salary? These people write books. They write books. They do photo. They get interviews. People pay to get interviews with these people. So they're still getting money outside of the contract with the gov. It's almost like a bonus. But it's charity, right? Right. Let's talk about the deviousness of these politicians, trustees. You hear that term? Politicians, trustees. They don't own the United States, right? Right. They are managers. They're elected officials for a period of time. So let's talk about it. How do they not know about trusteeship? How do they not know about charitable investments? Well, first of all, they're in a charitable position because they don't own it, and it's not theirs, and they're just sitting there in the place of other people speaking for them. So they're representatives. They're not above anybody. They're just a speaker because someone voted them. It's simple. So let's make this very clear. But when they're in these positions, we just mentioned that they get book signings, they get interviews. They also got a business that they might have had previous to it, right? Right. They had a business previous to it. So you see some of them step down from their companies. That's fair. They step down from their companies and dedicate their time because they don't want to show a public and private influence or a public and private conflict of interest. They are going to show that. So even when Donald Trump said he didn't have a tax return to show, he wants to show it, but my lawyers, mean, I'm telling my lawyers to let me show it, but they don't want to show it. His lawyers are telling him that. And then remember when they tried to impeach him? They didn't try to impeach him for tax evasion, did they? Right. That was just more propaganda. So when you step down from these companies, he didn't have anything to show at that point anymore. And when he said because he's smart, he's it's not that and he's smart enough that he's probably had nothing in his name for a long time. Maybe since he was born, his dad's been in the real estate industry. They understand that it's trust Christian, know not to control everything. That's what they know. The man doesn't even need to own the hotel. He just puts his name on it. People lease the name. That's how powerful he understands that it's owned not to control everything. Why you trying to get over on your last name? Guess what? He's leasing it to any sucker that'll buy. Millions of dollars. Oh, the world's going to go under on the eastern seaboard, global warming. And guess what? People are spending billions of dollars to have his name on a hotel so they could have people come to the hotel. We're not going to be specific to him. We're using him as an example of what the public politicians look like. We wish we could talk about another guy, but we got to get more information about him because, oh, he jumped fence. He was in the private. He has charities. He went into politics real quick. And maybe he didn't have enough money in the public. Because when you go into the public, think about it. Who's funding your campaign? He had to step down from his company. He wasn't taking a salary. Right. You got to be able to garner public funds now. Surprisingly, he was good enough at doing that. Because he's done it in the private. You think it's hard to raise funds in the public? He sold books before. The Art of the Deal. That's a bestseller. Was it New York Times bestseller? Oh man, he doesn't know how to sell anything. Right, clearly sold a book. Remember how we talked about politicians doing book deals? So let's go over to generally now what these politicians are doing. Oh man, the politicians are saying they're poor. They don't have any money because they don't have a salary anymore because they stepped down from their companies. They were private. Now they're in the public and they don't have a salary. And then you got the guys like Bernie. They want to show you just a little bit to make you feel good. Oh man, hey, I'm a regular guy trying to make it over. Right. So let's talk about these blind trust. This is not uncommon knowledge. Why? Because news editorials have been out about this for years now about how these politicians have blind trust and they're investing in these different conflict of interest, but they're sharing with you that we're against X, Y, and Z. So it continues to come out still to this day how politicians have their significant other investing in a market, investing in an asset right before a major event happened in the public. You hear it all the time. Is it a scandal? Is it insider trading? Oh, did we call it out? How is it not insider trading, Trust Christian in the Vault? Well, is it a conflict of interest? They're in the public. They don't own anything. Remember? They're in the public. They don't own anything. Behind closed doors, the money that they did have is being put to work by a blind trust asset manager. Is that bad to say, Trust Christian Vault? You can Google stories of how in the past 3 years it's come out about multiple politicians, these entities, and how these politicians are bickering with each other about these entities. You got some newbie politicians trying to get rid of these things. Like, what are you talking about? You're in them. You hear us? They're in them. You have to be in it. Why? Because when you go into the public, you give up that private conflict of interest. It's only right. So when they don't have any returns to show you all sometimes, which you keep seeing, what is it? Uh, Candidate after candidate after candidate after candidate, especially in the modern era. And this probably has happened for years now. You know, if you go back and look when they're going through their debates in the beginning, and somebody's like, "Hey, we need to see your tax returns," and then the other person sitting there saying, "Well, I'll show my tax returns when you show your tax returns." It's like, what do you mean? The other one's not? It's like, no, they're just bringing up a moot point. Because why? Then you get Donald sitting in there telling here, he's like, well, let's talk about who your major contributors are. The people that aren't paying taxes. We're not here to talk about not paying taxes. We're talking about it from the political, charitable perspective. Just like we talked about that church being able to have a land fund, a building fund. That's what it looks like in the public for us. They created Social Security. It's a general welfare fund. If you meet the income requirements, you can get it. If you don't get it. See how that works? What was the charitable investment based off of? It was based off of the same thing that principle that the church was based off. If someone ever hits hard times, income threshold, if someone ever hit hard times, they can actually go to this property and stay there for a period of time and get back on their feet, get back into the workforce and become productive. And it's no expense to them. Some people may have benefited from these programs. And there's nothing wrong with these programs in that respect. But think about that. That's how powerful a charitable investment is. Think about it. The government is a charitable investment vehicle. Why? Because those people that are politicians are going to not be around at one point. But the system of welfare and taking care of people that meet a certain income threshold will be. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Feel free to type any questions into the chat that you have. We still see people typing into the chat. It's always appreciated. Someone said it was Nancy. We know who that one is recently. We know who that one. If the person that's typing into the chat that said Nancy, we know who they're clearly tuned into the times. And this is public information. These are the same people that are feeding you the opposition mentality. Oh, we're on your side and this other person's against you. How's the whole government going to be against the people? It's not. These people are just in there making sure that their families can have good tax appropriations if it ever comes down to it for the next generation. And that's the facts. We're talking about finance. The government's built off of money, not built off of nothing. These people need to make sure that they're keeping enough money in their pocket and make sure that they're collecting enough taxes to feed that system that's allowing them to have either a salary, maybe going into those private investments that they don't share with you. Oh, we're against the war, but we're buying all the ammunition. Well, there might be a shortage of ammunition in the public. Why? Because the government might be buying a lot of ammunition right now in case they had to load up for any situation. They bought extra ammunition, not just regular amounts. Hey, we're going to pass and slide some things through. We're against it. We're quiet. Hush, hush. Keep your mouth shut. We're going to be quiet over here while people's lives are being taken in the world. You know this is a fact. We're not going to interfere in anything that's not profitable for us. And what's profitable right now is making sure American aluminum and steel is being pumped. So if we ever need to use it, we're fine. Then we can sell it to the black market. You hear that? That's where we are. Because it's private. You don't get to know what's going on in the gov as the people. But these are the people that are supposed to be in place of protecting you. How do they protect? Think about it. John F. Kennedy was shot because he talked about what we are talking about. Privacy. It's not around anymore, Trust Christian Vault. We're in the modern era. Right. But those colleges, hospitals, post offices, post office, we should say, museums, Robert Smith, he's not just sophisticated. He's not just smart. He's a sophisticated investor. That means he definitely makes over $250,000 a year. He's a sophisticated investor. He took money and put it into the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., created another endowment. Oh man, there's no way he was that smart to do that. Trust Christian in the vote. He that smart. He just gonna take money to pay off some college students' debt, cause that's what all wealthy people do. If I had all that money, I'd do it too. Yeah, right. Get there and do it. He did, and he did it in a specific way that it doesn't make you feel like, well, dang, if I got it, I don't know if I would just give that money away like that. Right, because he didn't give anything away. It's a charitable investment. So when he put money into the Smithsonian's, it's a charitable investment. His children are never going to have to pay to walk in there. They're going to be treated like royalty. That last name is on the wall. That's how it works. That's something that's for international people to see. And he paid to make sure that that's going to be there for international people to see. And many others. This is a responsibility of a trustee. Oh man, with great power, great money comes great responsibility. Right? It looks like he's doing what all the other billionaires are saying. I'm not going to give money to my kids. I'm going to give it to charity. He didn't. Have we seen him come out and just say, hey kids, here's $4 million, here's $1 million? No. He gave it to colleges. Oh well, come on, Trust Christian Vault. That it's only right. He got a lot. He ain't gonna spend it all. That's beside the point. The point is we're talking about charitable investments, not just giving money away like most people think. Oh, I'm gonna be in charity and there's no money to be made in charity. How is it no money to be made in charity? The school made money. The Smithsonian in D.C. made money when he gave money. These other organizations made money. Let's talk about Dr. Dre, and Jimmy Iovine giving away over $50 million to a school in California. You all can look it up. We don't know if Dr. Dre's a billionaire. We don't know if Jimmy Iovine's a billionaire. It doesn't matter. Clearly, they have the information to give a $50 million endowment away to a college. We could talk about T. Boone Pickens back in the day. Literally, he dropped billions on one of the colleges in Texas, and it was just really big at that time. Why are wealthy people making charitable investments? Well, because it's a charitable investment. It's not just giving money away, they make money giving it away. That's what our trustees are accustomed to going over in our trustee trainings at the workshop. That's a part of the system. If you're not going to grow assets and put things in place for the next generation, oh, what about the businesses? Ladies and gentlemen, there are many businesses that go under, and you can't guarantee that your children are going to want to do the business that you're doing. So the way that you get around that is just making sure that they're not liable, making sure that they don't get any assets directly, and they can just trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. That's what they can do. That's what the other wealthy people are saying. I'm not going to give the money to my kids. I'm going to give it to charity. And that's the way we're going to administer our wealth from generation to generation. But how many people are going to bypass that lack of knowledge? Who knows? This is the responsibility of trustees that we work with that come through our training program. Quite a few trustees are in charity. We talk about them and making investments all the time, working with the right people. You know, that's important. People have come to us for years talking about how they want to make a change in the world. You got to get in the right vehicle. If you're looking to go 0 to 100 real quick, you got to get into a vehicle that can go real quick. There's reasons why people buy specific vehicles. It's like asking you, well, does an LLC cost the same as a C corp? Does a C corp cost the same as a trust? Does a trust cost the same as a S corp? No, all of these things are different prices because they're vehicles to get you to a destination. We're talking about a vehicles, and specifically in the charitable space. This is where we sit in a mentor room, say, how long is charity gonna be around? Forever. Oh man, does it look like the government and welfare trust Christian Vault? No, it looks like a college that you may have went to or that you're familiar with. It looks like that. It doesn't look just made for poverty people. There are certain colleges that if you don't have a certain amount of money, you can't even go there. And guess what? At Harvard, they don't need the students' money. Stanford, they don't need the students' money. Any top 10 college in the United States, any top 20 college, they literally don't need the students' money, but they accept it. Why? Because there are reasons. Remember, it's like the royal family allowing people to walk through part of the property. They have something that's holding it in place through an endowment on the back end, but the front end, hey, there is no free lunch. There is no something for nothing. That's how they look at it. That's how we look at it. I just wanted to go over that today. So many people look at the private sector and they say, "Oh man, I don't know how I'm gonna make money." Well, on the public side, you got public businesses, and in the private sector, we just talked about it. The things that most people aren't going to talk about in the public because it's not sexy. It's not it doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies. But the wild part about it is this was the first thing our mentors led with. They led with the charity. They said, "Look, you could live your perfect calendar." A lot of people don't feel like they could live out their dreams. They be like, "Oh, my dreams can't make me any money." But whether you know it or not, because there's so many charities in the United States specifically and around the world, the charities have so much money, they have to give the money to other charities. That's why you see a Google, major Fortune 500 company, have a foundation to give money away to other companies so they can do development of these different technologies and different information, science, math. They're giving people, they're giving people finance to pay for an education. They're giving them information so they can develop it. That's a charitable investment. Oh, yeah, we don't need to be long winded. We're already an hour in. We appreciate everybody for tuning live, listen, replay. Feel free to type into the chat where you tune in live, listen, replay. We have the workshop coming up on August the 6th. This is definitely a passionate topic. We could talk about this all day. We could put a long episode out about this, but we want to be time fashionable nowadays with our episodes. They say people have short attention spans nowadays, supposedly, but our audience listens to most of the episodes. So look, people go back and listen to the episode. We're specifically talking about specific things here. It only needs to be one take, and that's that. So when we talk about charitable investments, we haven't really talked about charitable investments too often. I know we are aware that we talked about different elements of it, but we're talking about it now, going back into it in a very specific place, specifically coming into this workshop that we have coming up because you know we talk about, oh, trusteeship, but how many people are talking about trusteeship from a charitable perspective? They're not in the public. And that's how we know it's private, and that's why we wanted to do the episode, to share that with people. Feel free to hit the like, hit the bell button so you can get the notifications of when we do these pop-up episodes. But definitely always appreciate all the likes, always appreciate all the new subscriptions, or subscribers. We know we always get people subscribing, and look forward to seeing people at this workshop. This is a blast. It's going to be a great one. This is the first one really that we've done this year. It's really the second one, but more of the first one that we're doing for with the speakers that we're doing it with, that we traditionally do it with. And we're really excited to do this workshop coming up. This is going to be what we always do, just something that's better than the last time. We actually going to have some surprise speakers in the room. So this is where sometimes, maybe because the vault is private, and with the conversation that we have and the people that we have around, sometimes people may say, well, oh, I didn't know that was going to go on, so I didn't know how important it was to be there. Well, that's fine. But we understand it's one of those things. When your mentor calls for the meeting, you just fly over and you go, because you understand that it's one of those moments that they didn't ask you for anything, but now they're saying, hey, look, we got an opportunity for you. Are you looking to step up to the plate? And those are the things that you can do, even from a charitable perspective. We want people to understand, education is charitable investments, health is a charitable investment, but then that means that wealth is a charitable investment. Right. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Appreciate you for tuning in live.